Alright, so with that being said, what I can do is I can point my cursor in the direction I want it to travel. I don't have to worry about it being on a little bit of an angle or being on some crazy angle. It's going perfectly horizontal. And I'll type in 5 and hit enter, and now that line segment was 5. And then I can either continue with another segment or I can change direction, so I'll go down 5. And I'll point to the left and go 5. And I'll point up and go 5. And what I've done is I've created my square with 4 line segments, and we know how long they are. They're all 5. And we also know that they are all perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. Alright, so now you've got accuracy and you got speed. You can make things as big as you want. You can make lines perfectly straight, and heck, we even know how to connect to the endpoints and midpoints now with the object snap, right? If we come down, we can play around a little bit with the line tool and with the ortho function, and we see that there's a figure here. Now it looks like a little L shape, and in cyan I've added some dimensions, and the dimensions tell you how big to make your shape. I'd like you to use the line tool to recreate this shape. So here's the line tool, and I will point to the right, and let's look at the dimensions. It says make it 7 inches in that direction. Okay, and then make it 1.5 inches in that direction. And then go back to the left, 3.5 inches. And then go down 1.5, go to the left, 3.5. And then we can go up 3, or we can just type in C, because C closes our geometry, right? And we've recreated that shape. Everything is perfectly straight. Everything is precise. And it was done really quickly, wasn't it? Didn't have to write out a list of coordinates. Didn't have to think about positive or negative. Didn't have to think about where's the at sign go? Where's the comma go? Do I need a less than sign, right? Working with direct distance entry is how a CAD operator can work and draw things 10 to 20 times faster than a guy sitting at a desk with a compass and a triangle and a T-square. Now, right next to the line tool is another tool called Polyline. And, you know, they kind of look like they almost do the same thing. If we clicked on the Polyline tool and you started drawing segments, you'd say, well, this doesn't really look any different. It looks pretty much the same as what we've been doing with line. Okay, but notice what happens when I go to click on it. You see, if I had drawn that with lines, that would be individual line segments. But a polyline, all of the segments are joined together at the end. So I'm going to click on Polyline, because our next figure, it asks us to draw that shape using a polyline. So I'm going to start in the bottom corner here and go to the left. So I'll start down here and I'll say let's go 8 inches to the left and go 5 inches up and go 3 inches over and go 1.5 down and go 2 inches over and 1.5 up and 3 inches over, and then C means close. Let's close that up and check it out. Here is my figure. My figure is drawn with a polyline. So what's the difference? Why should we use polylines sometimes, and why should we use lines other times? Well, as we're working a little bit later on, it'll become apparent that sometimes you do want to draw things with a line tool and make individual segments, and sometimes you want to draw them with the polyline tool, so they're all joined together. With the line command, right, I can delete any one of those segments, and now that segment's gone. Unfortunately, though, if I was trying to delete any single segment with a polyline, well, the whole thing is joined, so the whole thing disappears when I delete it. So we'll keep that in mind, and as we go on, we'll learn a little bit more about why we might want to draw with one or the other while we're working. We'll move down a little tiny bit here. And we're going to talk about direct distance entry. but this time we're going to draw some angled lines. Okay, so now ortho is hot stuff if you want to draw perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal lines, right? But what happens when we have to do an angle? Well, I'm sure you could draw these figures using polar coordinates. The coordinates are a little clunky, right? And the idea is we can draw much faster if we know some of this Unit 11 magic I was going to teach you today. So what we're going to do is we're going to acknowledge that ortho is a great tool. But you know what? Turn it off. Because right next to it is an even better tool. And this tool is called polar tracking. So if you give it a click, that will turn it on. And what I want you to notice is when it turns on and you draw, it's going to kind of sort of do the same thing that ortho did. Take a look. As I move my cursor to the right, do you see that little dotted line? And do you see how it's telling me the length of my line and the angle I'm going at? See, it's locking me at 0 degrees, even if I'm a little above or below, because it knows I'm an imperfect person, and I can never eyeball that straight. So polar will also let you draw things straight if you need them horizontal, or if you need them vertical. But polar's got another advantage that ortho doesn't have. And here's the advantage. You're not just limited to 90 degrees with polar. You could set it for any angle you want. So I just set it for 45, which means that every 45 degrees it will lock. So here's 0, here's 45, here's 90, here's 135, here's 180. See, every 45 degrees it's stopping and telling me, okay, if you do some direct distance entry, I promise I'll keep the line exactly at that angle. So if you look down the list, I got 90 and 45 and 30, right? So 0, 30, 60, 90, 120, it'll go every 30. We go down a little further. 23 is actually 22 and a half. It's just rounded up because the units in AutoCAD are rounding. That would be half of a 45, right? And the fact is you could set this for any increment you want. You could even type in your own increment. But let's set ours for 45 because that's what we're using here to draw this rhombus. I wanted a line that's 3 inches long that goes 45 degrees up to the right. So we'll type 3 and hit enter, and then bam, there it is. And then I'll point it this way and type 3 and hit enter. And then bam, there it is. And then I'll point it this way and 3 and enter. And this way, 3 and enter. And then look what we got. We've got lines that are perfectly straight at the perfect right angle. And we didn't have to use coordinates to do it. Hallelujah, right? So there's our diamond or our rhombus shape. We could use the 45 degree angle again to draw my little octagon here. 2 inches to the right. 2 inches at 45. 2 inches straight up and down. 2 inches at 135. Right, I'm going to just make 2 inch increments all the way around as I construct my geometry and draw these guys with some lines to create some geometric shapes. Okay. Very nice. Now the last one here, this hexagon, still 2 inches on the edge, but notice the angle. The angle is 60, right? So let's go in here and let's see if we have a 60 degree increment. 90, 45, 30, 22 and a half. Where's 60? Well, you see 60 is actually an increment of 30, right? So you would select this line here. All right, so I'll go 2 inches to the right. Make sure that you're pointed to the right before you hit enter. And now here's 0, here's 30, here's 60. I'll go 2 inches that way. And then here is 90. I'll go 30 degrees that way. 2 inches. There's 120. 2 inches this way. 2 inches this way. And last but not least, 2 inches that way. And we've got our perfect hexagon constructed. All right, so ortho was hot stuff back in 1982. I'm not going to lie, okay? Fact is, that was like 28 years ago, people. So polar came out a little bit after, but polar is a much more versatile tool. It not only lets you go at angles, it also lets you draw wacky angles if you want to go off the grid, right? So look, I can get perfect angles, or if I'm just kind of playing around and drawing stuff by eye, I can make whatever angle I want. Ortho locks you in. You could never draw that line with ortho. So my suggestion is, why draw with the ortho when you can use polar? Just use polar. Okay, just like I suggested that we probably don't want to use snap mode anymore because it's the equivalent of, you know, eating crayons and paste in kindergarten when you should have been learning your ABCs. Okay, it's training wheels. It's a juvenile tool, and you shouldn't use it once you get some skills with the software.